Hey guys, it's Lotus and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to continue on with our read-along of Erha. Let's jump right into it. Chapter 92. This venerable one revisits Butterfly Town. Everyone present was shocked by his words, especially the Bitan sect disciples, their expressions flipping as if struck by lightning. In the cultivation world, the average cultivators memorize spells, the better cultivators understand spells, and the top-notch cultivators adapt spells. But far above and beyond the average, the better and the top-notch stand still another tier of cultivators, those who have no need for memorization, have long since understood, and are unsatisfied with adaptation, those who have grasped the final step. Creation. These are the masters who refine unique pills and elixirs, the experts who craft unparalleled arms and armor, the geniuses who draft unprecedented spells and talismans, people whose skill commands the title of Zhongshi. To the common cultivators, these Zhongshi were only a name on a scroll, or else a seal on a magical treasure. Those young disciples from Bitan sect never could have even imagined that the individual they dared try to arrest and bring to Tianyin Pavilion for interrogation was one such godlike person. Li Wuxin's forehead was already covered in a sheen, cold sweat, but as the leader of the sect, he had no choice but to put up a front and keep at it. He forcibly squeezed out a smile, his waxy yellow face the color of rice shells gleaming with a layer of grease. Ew. What a coincidence that this mark of the returning billows was created by Chu Zhongshi himself. This one has truly misunderstood Chu Zhongshi. However, while fighting with the vengeful ghost of Lo Xianxia at Butterfly Town, this one also obtained another item. I wonder if this item might have something to do with Chu Zhongshi. Chu Wanning furrowed his brows. What item? Li Wuxin waved his hand and, very smart, quickly brought out a brocade box. A weapon. Chu Wanning gazed silently at the box for a while before suddenly speaking. Is it a willow vine? This time, everyone, including Moran's eyes, opened wide in disbelief. Li Wuxin's voice shook as he spoke. How did you know? Unless it really was you. But just what exactly is happening? A golden light burst to life in Chu Wanning's palm, lengthening inch by inch until it coiled onto the floor, and as the glow dimmed down, a length of willow vine, leaves unfurled, appeared before the onlookers. Chu Wanning was unfazed. At this point, he was already certain that the incident at Butterfly Town was done by the same person as those at Jincheng Lake and Peach Blossom Springs, so he said, Li Zhuangzhu, the weapon in the box is this one, yes? Yes. Li Wuxin's voice nearly gave out on him. The brocade box was opened, and inside was indeed a length of willow vine, exactly the same in every way. Chu Wanning narrowed his eyes. He was already suspicious when that Jian Gui that was used to kill the Feather Tribe folks and framed Moran appeared at the Peach Blossom Springs. This confirmed his suspicions. Li Zhuangzhu, mind if I take a look at it? Li Wuxin mulled it over. Things weren't exactly going his way right now. It'd be best not to offend Chu Wanning any further. So he said, Chu Zhongshi is too polite. I'm only here to ask about the situation in the first place. Please feel free to look all you want. I'd be only too thrilled to get your thoughts on it. Why would I ever refuse? But Chang Gongzi was less than thrilled to hear this. He came here to pick a fight and spent so much money getting Bitan sect to back him up. What was this damn old man trying to do? Switch sides now that he'd met some pushback? He threw one meaningful look at Li Wuxin after another, each and every one an angry glare. Li Wuxin paid him no heed, but Moran noticed those looks from the side and mocked. Chang Gongzi, are your eyes okay? You've been squeezing them an awful lot. Meanwhile, Chu Wanning took the willow vine from the box and looked it over in detail. Sure enough, although it was no different from Tianwen and Jiangui in appearance, its life force was extremely weak, nothing like that of a holy weapon with a master. This was clearly a dead thing. Heart pluck willow. Xuemeng and his sharp hearing froze at these words. What? This piece of vine, and the ones used to kill the Feather Tribe folks back at Peach Blossom Springs as well. They were all broken off of the heart pluck willow. Chu Wanning replied. Ah, Shinmei called out, surprised. So that's what it is. Back then at Jincheng Lake, before the old dragon oh, wait, no, is this Chuaning talking? Sorry. Back then at Jincheng Lake, before the old dragon passed, he said the fake Gochen had a certain spell that required a strong wood elemental spirit to maintain. He had in all likelihood taken some branches from the holy tree before destroying Jincheng Lake. Although the spiritual power therein will gradually fade after the holy tree fell, it should still suffice for some time. Chuaning's slender fingers traced the golden leaves. He even made full use of these ones that have been practically depleted of spiritual power, either as fake evidence in a setup, or else giving them to his puppeteered pawns as weapons. A flame ignited in his hand as he spoke. He held the vine that was a mirror image of Tianwen to the flame, and it caught fire instantly, the blaze reflecting in the eyes of the onlookers, some shocked, others stupefied. This is not my weapon. Chuaning let it scorch the tip of the branch before closing his palm around the flame, extinguishing it. He tossed the willow vine aside and said mildly, Tianwen is possessed of abundant spiritual energy. Even the San-made true fire couldn't hope to burn it, much less an ordinary fire spell. Li Wuxin opened his mouth, then closed it, but then didn't want to give up that easily and opened it again. I've also heard about the Peach Blossom Springs incident, where it has it that Sisheng Peak's Mo Gongzi murdered the great immortal lord of the Feather Tribe. Oi, I didn't kill anyone! Moran waved his hand. Xue Jianyang, visibly displeased, was unyielding on this matter. As I've already explained to all the sects, that was not done by my nephew. Li Zhuangju, I won't be this polite the next time you bring it up. His reaction seemed to have stirred something in Moran's mind. He stilled, a flicker of something indiscernible flashing past those habitually smiling eyes. He muttered, Uncle. Chuaning spoke. The incident at Peach Blossom Springs was a setup. The situation being what it was, I had no chance to defend my disciple's innocence at the time. But since you of Bitan sect came all this way seeking the truth today, I can certainly tell you the whole story. In the flickering light of the candlelit lamps, Chuaning gave a concise summary of the events of Jincheng Lake and Peach Blossom Springs. By the time he finished, the disciples of Bitan sect were all stunned speechless, and Li Wuxin was sweating so much his clothes were soaked through. He dithered for quite a while before saying, Does Chu Zhongshi mean to say that there's someone in the world at this very moment who has practically mastered the Zhenlong chest formation of the 3 forbidden techniques? That's correct. How could that be? That's a forbidden technique. Even the leader of the #1 Rufeng sect couldn't hope to acquire the scroll 4 forbidden technique. Chuaning cut him off. I spoke nothing but the truth. Whether or not you believe it is up to you. Impossible! Li Wuxin insisted with a pale face, and he laughed loudly through trembling lips, as if he could convince himself it was only a joke if he just laughed it off as one. If there really is someone out there who has mastered the Zhenlong chess formation, the world will get thrown into disarray, and everything in the upper and lower cultivation realms alike will be rewritten. Ex-Emperor Taxianjun Moran was a little miffed. That guy only knows it. He hasn't mastered it. If he had, do you really think things would still be this peaceful right now? Li Wuxin's whiskers quivered, and he was just about to say something when all of a sudden a sword flashed through the door and a Bitan disciple, covered in blood, stumbled off from the sword. The disciple threw up a mouthful of blood before turning his tear-streaked face up to Li Wuxin and crying, Zhuanzhu, it's awful! The barrier you set around Butterfly Town broke! Vicious spirits rushed out, and my seniors used their own bodies to block them from escaping for the time being, but all 30 of my Shishang who were guarding the barrier sacrificed themselves in order to hold back the vicious ghosts, leaving only me to come report. He drew in a deep, shuddering breath, and then suddenly started wailing, Zhuangju, hurry and notify all the sects of the upper cultivation realm! All the dead people in that town are being controlled! It's a forbidden technique! A forbidden technique! What? Li Wuxin stumbled backwards into a pillar, looking pale and haggard like a corpse dumped out of its coffin. There's no way we can hold it off with just us! That disciple cried miserably, his tears washing the blood off his face. Zhuangju! Then, suddenly noticing Xue Jianyang, he turned to grovel toward him as well. Xue Zhangmen, I'm begging, please go as well. All of my Shishang, how could I face them? He continued rambling incoherently for a few moments, then suddenly closed his eyes and howled toward the sky in grief. They're all dead! The hall was deathly silent for a moment before bursting into an uproar. Xue Zhengyang was level-headed in the face of disaster, immediately telling Madame Wang to go send messages to the other 8 great sects of the upper cultivation realm, and sending Xuemeng to go gather the elders. Chuaning! There's no time to waste, I'll head over there first. But you don't know how to ride swords! Before Chuaning could respond, Moran rushed over, eager to meet that master of Zhenlong chess formation. Don't worry, uncle, I'll take Shizun there. Chuaning threw him a glance but said nothing, a silent assent. The two of them walked out of the hall together. Shumei stood frozen in place for a while, pale-faced, before suddenly snapping out of it and saying, Me too. But by the time he ran outside Loyalty Hall, they were already gone. Just then, Xue Zhengyang called him back, saying not to go running off alone, so he could only go and find Xuemeng and wait to head off together with the second group. As for Bitan sect, Li Wuxin had lived a life of luxury all this time, and never once ran into anything this big, but the old guy still wanted to save his face, so he drew in a breath to collect himself, then set about instructing people to take care of the messenger disciple and contact the elders of his own sect, gathering forces as well in preparation to make a good showing at Butterfly Town so as to regain some dignity. The assembly set off grandly from Sisheng Peak, rushing through the sky toward Butterfly Town like hundreds of shooting stars. Standing on his sword at the head of the fleet as they flew through the clouds, Li Wuxin couldn't resist stealing a sidelong glance at those disciples of the lower cultivation realm's #1 sect. He never could have expected that he would one day head into battle alongside such rabble, the very people he had always looked down on, and his feelings were a bit complicated for a moment. Traveling by sword, they crossed 1,000 miles in no time, and as the clouds before them parted ways to reveal a stream of demonic light the color of blood shooting straight up into the sky, Li Wuxin had no more thought to spare for matters of the upper or lower cultivation realm. Because, floating in the sky was an enormous, flickering array of crimson light the size of the town itself, delineated neatly into the checkered pattern of a chessboard. And on that chessboard, like so many carved figurines, hovered the silhouettes of all the dead townsfolk, 500 households, over 1,000 people, looking like a dense forest of human flesh. Li Wuxin cried out despite himself, It really is! Zhenlong Tesh Formation! Xue Zhengyang, expression dark, addressed Li Wuxin. Li Zhuangju, I'll take my people to the southeast side, but we'll have to trouble you and yours to take care of the northwestern side. The other sects aren't here yet, we'll have to hold out for now. There were more pressing matters right now than his use of the term we, so Li Wuxin nodded. Got it! Got it! Xue Zhengyang cupped his fist in his other hand toward him in a gesture of respect, and led the disciples of Sisheng Peak down to land on the southeast side of Butterfly Town. The defensive barrier made of the flesh and blood of Bitan sect's guarding disciples was already on the verge of collapse, the field of its spiritual energy barely holding out. And on the other side of the translucent barrier roamed masses of walking corpses. Chuaning! Seeing a man in drifting white robes beside another in blue-silver light armor standing in front, Xue Zhengyang called out, What's the matter? Is the barrier irreparable? Chuaning had already been here for a while. Xue Zhengyang couldn't understand why the barrier was still in such a sorry state with the #1 Zhongshu of barriers standing right there, but he got no response from Chuaning. Xue Zhengyang was just about to call again when Moran turned around and gestured at him to not. Uncle, shush! Come over here! Xue Zhengyang walked over. What is it? Don't disturb him! Moran pointed at Chuaning. Although standing, his eyes were closed and his hands were held pressed together, and his lips were completely colorless. Xue Zhengyang started and reached out to feel the pulse at the side of his neck, then asked in alarm, Soul projection? Yeah, it's all ghosts in there, couple thousand of them. But we couldn't find Lo Xianxian, so she's probably in the deeper parts of the town. We don't know what exactly is happening yet, or what the guy behind all this is plotting this time, so we went to go find Lo Xianxian to ask. She's already a vicious ghost gone berserk. What even is there to ask? Xue Zhengyang smacked his leg in anger. Reinforcing the barrier is more important right now. Do! Moran said sharply. Shizun temporarily cast his soul out using soul projection precisely because it's all dead people in there, and this way he can go in covertly without alarming the enemy. If the barrier gets reinforced now, it'll get Shizun killed. What? Xue Zhengyang exclaimed in a panic. You stay right here and keep an eye on him. I'll go tell Li Wuxin. Moran nodded, then added, I'll send up a blue-colored signal as soon as Shizun's soul returns. Then we can start mending the barrier from all directions. But before then, Uncle must absolutely not allow them to mend it, or it'll cause the thousands of ghosts to begin devouring in a frenzy. Shizun only has his soul in there. He won't be able to defend himself against that. I know already. Xue Zhengyang was already a distance away before he'd even finished his reply. Moran lifted his eyes toward that barrier on the brink of failure. There's not much time left. Shizun, you found Lo Xianxian by now, right? He spoke in a quiet voice as he turned to look at him, and in his worry, reached out without thinking to close his hand around Chuanning's ice-cold one, wholly unaware of his own actions. Almost. Just then, Shimei touched down nearby alongside Xuemeng and the rest, but unexpectedly, when he looked up from the crowd, the sight that greeted him was that of the pair before the barrier with their hands entwined. He froze, color draining from his face, then bit down on his lip and slowly turned his head away. Huh? Is Shimei jealous? Author's notes. Warning, the content that follows will uncover the first wave of truths from the previous timeline and will develop a crucial climatic plot event. Both mains will be facing the important turning points in their lives in this lifetime. To give a weak hint, the last huge wave of knives for Shizun and the first wave of knives for Moran are coming. In order to keep the pace of the novel unaffected until this arc ends, there won't be any mini-theaters. Promise me that no matter what you read next, do not perform the dangerous stunt of boring Meatbun alive. Thank you, thank you. If you're unhappy about anything, please vent it on 1.0 dog, or form a dog beating squat with Mung Mung. Meatbun is innocent. Okay, thanks Meatbun for warning us that we're gonna get a lot of knives in the next chapter and in the following chapters. So a lot of truths will finally be revealed, I guess. But yeah, so to recap this chapter, they find out that the person behind the fake Gochen and the Peach Blossom Springs and Butterfly Town are all the same person because they found a fake willow vine that is similar to Jiangui and Tianwen. So it means that it's all the same person behind it. And it turns out that this person is using Zhenlong chess formation to control all of the corpses at Butterfly Town. So all of the sects that are available are rushing over to Butterfly Town to reinforce the barrier before the ghosts can get through. And Chuaning ends up using soul projection that he can go through the barrier, but that means that his soul is vulnerable and his body is left empty. So Moran has to guard and keep safe his body, his vessel. Well, Xuemeng and Shimei arrive in the second wave of cultivators that are arriving, and Shimei seems to be a little despondent that Moran is holding Chuanning's hand. Why is that? Does Shimei really like Moran romantically? Does Shimei have some other ulterior motive? Can Shimei be trusted? I don't know. I'm still kind of suspicious of him. Anyway, let's continue reading. Okay. Chapter 93. This venerable one's Shizun. Who dares touch? Chuanning's living soul roamed the inside of the barrier. Everywhere he went, he found the wandering of ghosts and the vague shadows of lost souls. But the strange thing was those mangled corpses. The heart had been dug out of every single one of them before death. Their chests were empty, some with bits of artery and pieces of flesh drawn outside, others with the white of their ribcage visible. Oh my gosh, if their heart was dug out before death, that means that their hearts were pulled out while they were still alive. That's torture. He knew something was off, but the defensive barrier around Butterfly Town grew weaker with every passing moment, and he couldn't afford to tarry. He sped toward the Chen Manor with all haste. He arrived there to find 4 cauldrons, each half the height of a man, placed in the 4 cardinal directions outside the Chen Manor, and giving off fumes that grew increasingly denser. Rather than the typical white, the fumes were respectively colored red, blue, brown, and gold. Fires were lit under the cauldrons, each filled to the brim with blood, but once closer, he found masses upon masses of red-colored flesh piled up beneath the boiling blood. Human hearts! The cauldrons were stuffed full of the hearts that were missing from the bodies of the deceased. Sand amassed into tower. Chuaning muttered to himself. He suddenly understood why, even after having searched for so many days, they couldn't find any trace of that person's pursuit for the spiritual essence. That lunatic, to think he'd actually go this far! Per this so-called sand amassed into tower, the hearts of hundreds of people with the same elemental are dug out and gathered together. By the resentment of the dead, the resulting power, while not as strong as that of a spiritual essence, would still be significant for a short amount of time. But why Butterfly Town? Why Lo Xianshan? Stepping into the Chun Manor, its courtyards and halls in utter disarray and everything toppled over, he found Landlord Chen and Madam Chen hanging from the ceiling beams, both missing their hearts as well. But unlike the townspeople outside, they had not reanimated, for both of their bodies from the waist down had been ripped to threads by some savage force, the mutilated mess no longer bearing any resemblance to legs. He made a round through the main hall and didn't find Lo Xianshan. Further in, inside the Chen family's ancestral shrine room, he saw a bowl of minced meat in front of each and every memorial tablet, as if an offering. Looking closer, there was half an eyeball mixed into the mince, and a segment of a finger. Feeling nausea rise in his throat, Chuaning was just about to leave when a burst of crisp laughter came from above. His eyes snapped upwards as the white paper lantern swayed and the candles inside lit up one after the other. Lo Xianshan sat on a ceiling beam, dressed in the vivid red of wedding robes, and dangling a pair of feet bare and delicate like jade as she rocked gently back and forth, contemplating Chuaning with a tilted head. "Uh-oh, you found me." She giggled. Lo Xianshan looked no different, but behind that gleeful expression, her soul was nothing like the bashful girl Chuaning had met back then. Arrogant and unbridled, blazing like a flame, her eyes were big and round still, but they flickered now with a demonic red. Lo Xianshan had demonized. Tianwen could interrogate a ghost only once. Chuaning had already used it on her when he came to Butterfly Town to exorcise evil the first time, so he could not do so again. The only thing he could do now was to suppress the demonic nature within her soul, call back her original consciousness, and ask her then. Chuaning spoke. "Lo Xianshan, why are you here?" But hidden inside his sleeve, he was already preparing to unleash a spell.
"Huh."
The petite girl spat.
"I felt like it. Not that it's any of your business."
Chuaning shook his head, eyebrows knitted even tighter until it looked like there was a scar carved between his brows. "Over there in the bowl, is that Chen Bohuan's younger brother?"
"Oh, him!"
Lo Xianshan couldn't care less.
"Only the row on the left. The row on the right is that little Yao Bi." "Of all the men out there, she just had to try and steal my husband, just 'cause she's the governor's daughter. Getting chopped into mincemeat is exactly what she deserves."
Lo Xianshan had already lost it completely by this point. Her temperament was nothing like that in life, and she couldn't recognize the man before her as the Yang Lo Gege who once fought to requite her. Chuaning's heart dropped upon hearing that Chen Yao had also met the same fate. In a low voice, he inquired, "Then, the young daughter of the Chens?"
"She was kind to me. I wouldn't treat her poorly."
Lo Xianshan smiled as she spoke, her lips vibrantly red as if painted with blood. Rubbing her belly, she said smilingly,
"That's why she's in here. I ate her. This way little sis will always be with me, and no one will be able to bully her."
"You've truly gone mad." A blinding light burst to life in his palm even as he spoke, the flash of golden brilliance instantly illuminating the whole room. Chuaning leapt up and flung a curse onto her forehead as she yelled in surprise. Demonic screeching filled the room. Chuaning acted with speed and purpose, promptly drawing 10 golden chains in an instant to bind her. He pressed the tips of pale, slender fingers to the center of her brow, his eyes flickering with fire and lightning, his expression dark as thunderous clouds. His thin, lightly colored lips parted slightly as he silently chanted an incantation. Lo Xianshan's eyes bulged outwards, and saliva dripped from the corner of her lips, her originally pretty face twisting into something terrifying in the chanting.
"Shut up! Let me go! Blood for blood! I've done nothing wrong!"
Chuaning paid her no heed, eyes cool and downcast as the light at his fingertips grew brighter still.
Ah!
Lo Xianshan began to shriek hysterically. Let me go! Let me go! My head! It hurts! I can't take it anymore! She screamed and wailed, but then suddenly stopped, a sinister crimson lighting up her eyes as the corner of her lips quirked up eerily. She snickered lightly.
Is that what you were hoping to hear?
Phoenix's eyes widened. Chuaning pulled back his head and leapt backwards in the same instant. In a flurry of white, he dodged Lo Xianshan's soul-shattering strike just in time, the silk of his robe settling gently around him as he landed a distance away on the veranda. Lo Xianshan stood up slowly, no sign whatsoever of the faked agony just now. The purification spell actually had no effect on her. Instead, she seemed even stronger than before.
Did you really think a measly purification spell could do anything to me?
Liu Xianshan sneered.
I've devoured the life force of this town's 1,000-odd people, and am now on the cusp of cultivating a body of flesh. Then I'll go take my husband back from the netherworld, and we'll leave this place and be inseparable. How could I possibly let you ruin it for me on the final stretch?
Her original nature was gone. All that she knew now was her desire to be with Chen Bo Huan forever. An idea occurred to Chu Wanning. He asked in a low voice, "Who told you you could cultivate a body this way?"
What's it to you?
Chu Wanning replied coldly. Whoever it was, he lied to you. Your original body is already no more. The only way to acquire another is through the cycle of reincarnation. There is no such thing as achieving rebirth by consuming the life force of 1,000 people. He tricked you into slaughtering all the townspeople only to gather their hearts for his own ends. Lo Xianshan's eyes widened.
Impossible! He wouldn't lie to me!
Who is he?
He's...
She mumbled over and over, then clutched her head, shrieking,
I don't know! I don't know! I want a body! I want to live! I don't want to die! He didn't lie to me! He didn't lie to me! You're the one that's lying! That's right! You're the one that's lying!
A swish of red silk, and the ghost was rushing toward Chu Wanning with her claws extended. Just then, an ominous sound thundered from the skies above. Chu Wanning dodged Lo Xianshan's attack and looked up to find a long, narrow crack in the defensive barrier, ripped through by the overwhelming resentful energy of the town. The life energy of those outside seeped in through the crack, and all throughout the town came the roars of the undead. The barrier was about to break. He was out of time. If he didn't recover Lo Xianshan's consciousness soon, he'll have no choice but to kill her. And then there went their last lead. Outside the barrier, Li Wuxin looked up at that horrifying crack in midair and yelled towards Xue Zhengyao, "Are we still not mending the barrier? We gotta mend it! If it breaks and the 1,000-some walking dead all come rushing out, we won't be able to hold them back!" "Just a little while longer!" Xue Zhengyao's expression wasn't much better, large droplets of sweat beading on his forehead. "Don't mend it just yet! Yu Heng is still inside! Just wait a little while longer!" Li Wuxin cursed under his breath, his heart beating wildly at the sight of that barrier cracked like an egg. He snarled, "And how much blood do you think will be spilt if the barrier fails? How will you answer to the entire cultivation world then?" Then he whipped around to yell at his disciples, "Have the messages been sent yet? When will the other sects get here?" The disciple in charge of messages was drenched in a nervous sweat. "The other 8 great sects all said that this is a serious matter that must first be reported to the respective sect leaders, and that the sect leaders and elders will have to discuss things before they can send any aid." Li Wuxin's face darkened even more. "What about Rufeng sect? Nangong Xianzang has always been meddlesome. Surely he isn't so spineless." The disciple was at a loss for words when the communication talisman suddenly started glowing. He quickly read it and announced, overjoyed, "Rufeng sect is coming! They just sent word that they're sending people over here right now!" Sure enough, within 10 minutes, a wave of blue clouds appeared on the horizon, which, once closer, were not clouds at all, but a drove of nearly 1,000 strong, each donning blue mantles emblazoned with the heron, flying through the sky on swords lined up in impeccable formation. And at their head were Nan Gongzi and Ye Wangxi. Nan Gongzi rode in astride his Fey Wolf, now Bai Jin, jaded bow on his arm and full quiver across his back, an imposing air about him, the arrogance and intemperance of youth right clear on his face. Ye Wangxi was dressed all in black as before, with a cloak embroidered with the heron of Rufeng sect on top, looking 7 parts handsome, 3 parts beautiful. What is this? Nan Gongzi saw the sorry state of the barrier and immediately blew up, his furious gaze scanning the crowd and skipping right over the people from Sisheng Peak of the lower cultivation realm to land on the sect leader of Bitan sect, the only one here even remotely fit to be addressed by him. Li Wuxin, do you not see that crack in the barrier? What are you lot doing just standing around? Don't you know to mend it? Li Wuxin was Nan Gongzi's senior by far, but Nan Gongzi was the sole heir of the foremost sect in the cultivation world, so he could only grin and bear it even as his entire face flushed red under the admonishment. Ha! Finally, he's embarrassed. Young Master Nangong, little do you know, but the barrier remains in disrepair only at Xue Zhangmen's insistence. And with that, the hot potato was tossed to Xue Zhengyang. Sisheng Peak? Nan Gongzi glanced at Xue Zhengyang and let out a hump, perhaps in contempt or perhaps something else. Then he waved his hand and turned to speak to his personal attendant. Just go patch the shitty pot up. All this yammering almost had made me thinking it was something serious. Ye Wangxi tried to stop him. Young master. But Nan Gongzi wouldn't even spare him a glance. And, even stranger, Song Chutong was here as well, face shrouded behind a layer of white silk and eyes downcast, looking demure and obedient as before. But today she stood with Nan Gongzi rather than Ye Wangxi. Of course she's jumping ship to the one that's more powerful. No loyalty at all, huh? Rufeng's sect was nothing if not expeditious, and obeyed none but their own leaders, especially those personal attendants of Nan Gongzi's. The lot of them stepped up in sync, completely ignoring any and all explanations as they immediately set about laying down the seals and arrays to mend the barrier. Wait! Xue Zhengyang had only just interrupted 4 or 5 people's attempts, yet when he turned around, there was another already forming the mending seal and sending it flying in a streak of blue light toward the crack in the barrier. Blood drained from Xue Zhengyang's face as he yelled, "You hung!" There was a sudden bang and sparks flew everywhere. At the very last second, just as the seal was about to reach the crack, it was cleaved apart by a flash of crimson like a bolt of blood-red lightning. All heads snapped up collectively to see a young man with a length of willow vine in hand, guarding the barrier where he stood on his sword in midair. His features were bright and friendly, as if naturally shrouded with warmth, but right now his eyes were sharp and unyielding, gaze alight like the flaring leaves of the vine raised in his hand, coursing with a light the color of blood and erupting with sparks. High above them in the air, Moran's brows were drawn low in a frown as he spoke darkly. Didn't I effing say that no one's to touch this barrier? Are y'all dweebs deaf or stupid? He loathed Chuaning, but that was between the two of them. Be it the past life or this one, on pain of death, he absolutely will not allow anyone other than himself to touch so much as a hair on Chuaning. He said it before, he's the only one allowed to kill the one he hated, the only one allowed to wreck him, to torment him. In his fit of rage, he couldn't help the savagery of his past life from rearing its head, bleeding through into his demeanor and making it deviate completely from his usual playful and easygoing young master attitude. Xue Zhengyang, Xue Meng, and even Shimei were taken aback by this display of his, to say nothing of those of Rufeng's sect. Author's notes. 1.0 dog is pretty much obsessed by 0.5 dog near the end of this chapter. He reclaimed his bastard energy, ha ha ha. We'll count him as 0.75 dog. So Meatbun is pretty much saying that he's regressed a little bit, back to his Taxian Jun persona. But it's understandable, he does not want Chuaning to be harmed. So to recap this chapter, Chuaning is walking around inside the barrier. He sees all of the bodies of the corpses have their hearts ripped out and are being used to light cauldrons. And he finally bumps into Lo Xianxian, who has been demonized. She's no longer that sweet, innocent girl that she once was. She's killed all of her in-laws, and she even ate her sister-in-law. And she's completely obsessed with just cultivating a human physical body and reuniting with her dead husband. So she doesn't care about anyone that she hurts or even kills. And she was definitely tricked by the fake Go Chen. He pretty much used her to do his dirty work for him. Now, Chuaning can't even exercise her. She's too powerful for some reason. What is making her so powerful? How strong is this fake Go Chen? Why is he so strong? And while Chuaning's inside the barrier, the cultivators on the outside are trying to repair the barrier. However, if it's repaired, Chuaning will be trapped inside. So Shui Zhengyong is trying to stop the other cultivators from repairing the barrier, but it's cracking, so the evil fierce corpse will be freed soon. So they have to make a decision. Ru Fengsek finally arrives, and Nan Gongsi is ordering them to seal the barrier, but at the last moment, Moran steps up and declares that he will not let anyone touch the barrier until his Shizun is out safe. Yes, Moran, protect your Shizun. Stand up for Chuaning. So that's what's happened so far. It's getting really, really serious. I have a feeling that we're gonna get more knives soon, and some truths will come out. We might even find out this identity of this fake Gochen. Maybe. They're super powerful. They can use Zhenlong chest formation. They know Moran from his past life. They know Ta Xianjun. Who could they be reborn as? Who are they? As we speculate, let me know your theories, but don't spoil for anyone, okay? But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed today's read-along, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!